It was a city on the cusp of the Roaring Twenties. Toronto, a place of ambition, of industry, and of secrets, and in that city, one man seemed to have it all. His name was Ambrose Small, a theater magnate, a man who built an empire from the ground up, one stage light at a time. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a character, larger than life. Known throughout the grand theaters he owned across Ontario, he was a man who understood show business, knew how to draw a crowd, but he was about to become the star of his own mystery. A mystery that would captivate a nation for a century. A story with a beginning, a middle, but no end. Ambrose, or Amby, as some called him, was a man of contradictions. He was known for his sharp business mind, a mind that had amassed a considerable fortune. He owned a string of opulent theaters, including the Grand Opera House in Toronto. These were his kingdoms, places of drama and spectacle. But his personal life was just as dramatic. He had a reputation, a gambler, a womanizer, a man who enjoyed the darker, less respectable corners of the city. He lived in a fine home in the affluent Rosedale neighborhood with his wife, Teresa. But their life was far from a simple domestic tale. There were whispers, rumors of affairs, of a life lived in the shadows, away from the glittering marquee lights. The year was 1919, and Ambrose Small was about to make the deal of a lifetime. After years of building his theatrical empire, he decided it was time to sell. He found a buyer, the Trans-Canada Theatres Limited. The price was staggering for the time, a cool $1.7 million. On December 2nd, the deal was finalized. Ambrose deposited a check for $1 million into his bank account. $1 million, a fortune beyond most people's wildest dreams. He was suddenly one of the wealthiest men in Canada. He had everything to live for, or so it seemed. The money was safe, the future was bright, but the future, as it turned out, was very, very short. And so with $1 million in the bank, Ambrose Small walked out of his office and into history. He had the money, he had the success, he had a wife at home and, it was said, a mistress on the side. He was a man with a complicated life, full of big deals and secret passions. He was known for his flamboyant personality and his love of the good life. The city was his stage and he was its leading man. But on that cold December day, the curtain was about to fall unexpectedly. The final act was one no one saw coming. And the leading man? He was about to disappear from the script entirely. December 2nd, 1919, a Tuesday. It began like any other day for Ambrose Small. He went to his office at the Grand Opera House. He met with his lawyer, FWM Flock. The big deal was done. The check was secure. He seemed to be in high spirits, happy, joking with his staff. He had lunch with his wife, Teresa, at the King Edward Hotel, a picture of domestic normalcy. But underneath the surface, was something else happening? A plan being set in motion? Or was it just another day for a man who had finally reached the pinnacle of his success? The city hummed with its usual energy, unaware that one of its most prominent figures was living out his final documented hours. Later that afternoon, back in his office, Ambrose met with his lawyer again. They chatted about the future, about what a man does with $1 million. The conversation was light, casual, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Around 5:30 in the evening, Ambrose Small walked out of the Grand Opera House. He told his assistant he wouldn't be back that day. He stepped out onto Adelaide Street. The winter air was crisp. The evening crowds were beginning to fill the sidewalks. He was last seen by a newsstand vendor. He bought a paper, and then he was gone. He simply vanished, as if a stage magician had made him disappear into thin air. No one saw him get into a car. No one saw him meet anyone. He just walked away. For a few days no one thought much of it. Ambrose was known to disappear for a day or two, to indulge his vices. His wife Teresa wasn't immediately alarmed. It was his pattern after all. But one day turned into two. 2 days turned into a week. Then weeks. The man who was always the center of attention was nowhere to be found. The silence became deafening. The millionaire had vanished without a trace. The money in the bank remained untouched. His office was just as he had left it. It was as if he had stepped out for a newspaper and simply walked off the face of the earth. Finally, the alarm was raised. The police were called in. The disappearance of Ambrose Small was no longer a private matter. It became front-page news. Millionaire theater magnate missing. The headline screamed. The story had everything. Money, power, a colorful victim. The public was instantly hooked. It became the talk of the town, then the country. Where was Ambrose Small? The search began in earnest. Police scoured the city. They interviewed friends, family, and business associates. They chased down every rumor, every whisper. But every lead turned into a dead end. The trail was impossibly, frustratingly cold from the very beginning. The investigation was massive. The Toronto Police, and later the Ontario Provincial Police, were on the case. They had a missing man and $1 million motive. Or was it a million motives? The list of potential suspects read like a cast of characters from one of Ambrose's own theatrical productions. First, there was his wife, Teresa Small. She stood to inherit the entire fortune. Did she have a hand in her husband's disappearance to escape an unhappy marriage and claim the money? She maintained her innocence throughout, but the shadow of suspicion lingered. Then there was the loyal secretary, John Doughty. He had worked for Ambrose for years, and as it turned out, he had a secret of his own. Just weeks after Ambrose vanished, John Doughty also disappeared. But he didn't go empty-handed. He had absconded with thousands of dollars in bonds from the company's safe. He was eventually tracked down in Oregon and extradited back to Canada. The police were sure they had their man. Doughty must have killed his boss and fled with the money. But Doughty insisted he was innocent of any violence. He claimed he only took the bonds after he realized Ambrose was gone for good. He swore he had no idea what happened to Small. Despite intense grilling, his story never changed. He was convicted of theft, but not of murder. The lead suspect was a dead end. And what about the other woman? A longtime mistress named Madeline St. Denis. Ambrose had reportedly promised to leave his wife for her. Did a lover's quarrel turn deadly? Or perhaps he had run away to start a new life with her? The police investigated, but found no evidence to link her to the disappearance. The theories grew wilder. Some said Ambrose was murdered by a gambling syndicate over unpaid debts. Others whispered that he had been killed by a jealous husband. One of the most persistent theories was that his body was incinerated in the furnace of his own Grand Opera House, leaving no evidence behind. The police even brought in a famous psychic from New York and consulted with Scotland Yard. They chased down reported sightings of Ambrose Small from all over the world. Was that him in Mexico, or working on a ship in the South Pacific? Each report was meticulously investigated, and each one led nowhere. The case file grew thicker and thicker, filled with speculation, false leads, and tantalizing but unprovable theories. The disappearance of Ambrose Small became a national obsession, a puzzle with too many pieces that didn't fit. The police had suspects, motives, and theories, but what they didn't have was a body. And without a body, there was no crime scene. There was only a ghost. Years turned into decades. The Roaring '20s came and went. The world went to war again. But the mystery of Ambrose Small never faded. It became a piece of Canadian folklore, a ghost story told around campfires, a cautionary tale about wealth and secrets. Ambrose Small was officially declared dead in 1924, 5 years after he was last seen. His wife, Teresa, a devout Catholic, inherited his vast fortune and gave most of it away to the church. She lived a quiet, reclusive life until her death, never speaking publicly about the husband who had vanished so completely. The Grand Opera House, the centerpiece of his empire, was eventually torn down, but the story lived on. The case has been re-examined countless times by journalists, authors, and amateur sleuths. Books have been written, documentaries have been made. Each one offers a new theory, a new angle. Was it the wife, the secretary, a business rival? Did he stage his own disappearance, a final grand performance to escape a life he no longer wanted? This theory is compelling. A man who loved showmanship, pulling off the ultimate vanishing act, leaving everyone guessing. It's a romantic notion, the idea of him living out his days in some exotic, faraway place, watching the world search for a man who was never really lost. The fascination with the Ambrose Small case is about more than just an unsolved crime. It's a story that taps into our deepest curiosities. It's about the idea that someone can have everything, money, power, success, and still just disappear. It reminds us that even in a bustling modern city, a person can be erased without a trace. The lack of a definitive answer is precisely what makes the story so powerful. It allows for endless speculation. It becomes a canvas onto which we can project our own fears and theories. Everyone can be a detective. Everyone can have their own idea of what really happened on that cold December day. And so, more than a century later, the ghost of Ambrose Small still haunts Toronto. His name is synonymous with mystery. His story is a permanent fixture in the annals of Canadian true crime. It's a puzzle with no solution, a play without a final act. We are left with the same question that baffled police in 1919. What happened to Ambrose Small? We may never know for sure. And perhaps, that's the way it was always meant to be. A final, baffling mystery from a man who spent his life in the business of illusion and spectacle. His greatest trick, it seems, was his last.